Welcome back, everybody. This is Clarence Hill of the Fort Worth Star Telegram, Cowboys beat writer, and here for another edition of Cowboys Overtime, sponsored by our friends at Windows Nation. That's not Mac Ingle over there. Mac Ingle's on vacation, doing some things back home in Indianapolis. We got Steven Johnson, our man on the scene with TCU, who's been the TCU's good luck charm you're here filling in for Max. Steven, how you doing? How you handling this Texas weather? I mean, it was 80 degrees 2 days ago. Then it was 50 the next, and it's still kind of chilly this morning. I mean, you're doing okay with this Texas weather, this bipolar Texas weather?
Honestly, it's the same way in Tennessee. You know, one day it'll be 76. The next day you'll have a bunch of rain, and it might be 40-something degrees. So I don't ever think it's been 90 degrees in February like it was Tuesday, I think.
It was crazy.
I'm a little used to like the mood swings of the weather, but nothing as hot as it was early this week. It felt like it was almost June.
Maybe Windows Nation can do, help us out with, putting some, covering up some of this weather with those window coverings. So again, if you guys are interested in window coverings and all your window needs with siding and doors, consider our friends at Windows Nation. Speaking of weather, I'm leaving Texas, DFW, and headed to the combine in Indianapolis on Monday to cover the Indianapolis NFL scouting combine. It's in Indianapolis. It's there every year. It's basically a swap meet for NFL players, for veterans. It's really the unofficial beginning of free agency where the teams start, I would say tampering with players and talking to agents on the slide. And certainly have all the college kids, the college seniors there and guys who have declared for the draft there to get poked and prodded and run 40s and different type of testing as they get ready for the 2023 NFL draft. I'm just going to tell you, it is burning the candle at the combine from the beginning, morning, noon, and night, because you have all the stuff during the daytime with the interviews and the testing and different things like that. And then you have the swap meet at nighttime when agents and owners and GMs and coaches are running around the city of Indianapolis, and you got to keep up with them. You got to eat a little steak, because Indianapolis is known for their steaks and their cocktail sauce at St. Elmo's, and you got to be able to smooth with Jerry Jones and those guys at those venues, and also be on top of your game in the morning for the different things they have for the workouts. And one thing about the combine has become a made for TV event because they have a lot of the workouts at night, for prime time viewing, because there's so many people that are interested in finding out what's going on at the combine. And I know from your perspective, TCU is going to be at the combine with their record 9 players. That just tells you the spoils what has been a great season. What was a great season with TCU? They got 9 players headed to the combine. That's an example. If you got a good team, you're going to have a lot of guys being looked at by the NFL for the draft. And those 9 players, who stands out the most? Just can you talk about some of those players that are going to the combine from TCU and who you think will get drafted highest?
Well, just touching on the 9 players right quick. I remember maybe right before they made the playoffs, I was kind of trying to tell everybody this is when Max Duggan was kind of getting on the Heisman train and his kind of campaign was building up. I told people, like, this wasn't just a story of a quarterback having a great year. TCU had a lot of NFL talent on both sides of the ball. So 9 players, that was about the number I thought they could have potentially drafted. But the biggest prospect is obviously going to be Quentin Johnston, the wide receiver, who I think will be – it'll be interesting to see if he runs and things like that. I think if he goes in there and runs a 4.4, 4.3, that will probably cement his place as wide receiver number 1. But he's a guy that could go as early as the top 15, top 10, depending on some mock drafts I've seen. I think the guy that could probably help his case the most would be Kendrick Miller, especially if he's able to, bust out a nice 40 time in the 4.4s, maybe in the low 4.5s. He's a guy I think is a day 2 running back, but could possibly move up and maybe into that higher end of the second round. And then I think Travius Hodges Tomlinson, the nephew of LaDainian Tomlinson, Jim Thorpe winner. I know you did. I know there was some conversation about how tall is he. So it'll be interesting to see if he tests what his numbers will be, and if he's if he's able to overcome any questions about maybe his potential size. I thought he was legit one of the best cornerbacks in America this past season.
One thing about Hodges Tomlinson, I did something at the Senior Bowl, and I talked about to the guys at the Senior Bowl. One reason was he wasn't invited to the Senior Bowl because they didn't think it was tall enough. And we all know we play sports. What they list you in the program is not always your height or your size.
Mm.
And the people on the street say he's 5'7". I don't know. You've been next to him. They're going to measure him at the combine, and so they're going to, all this stuff is going to matter, and they're going to measure up, and you're going to see the tail of the tape. And I don't know what he can do if he can wear some. They're going to do it in sock feet. I don't think he can, have some platform shoes out there, but that's going to cost him a couple of rounds. Performance-wise on the field, he is a top playmaker cornerback, and you saw what he did, Jim Thorpe Award winner. But with these big receivers like Quentin Johnson, you're going to need somebody who can be big enough to cover him. Certainly, he's already been slotted as probably a slot corner or type as a slot corner for the next level because of his size. But, what he measures, is going to be a big storyline, going to be a big impact on the draft prospect.
Yeah, I stood right next to him at the Fiesta Bowl where 5'7" sounds short. He's not like 5'10" or close to 6 foot or anything like that. 5'7" might be a tad, maybe an inch and a half too short, but I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world for him to be a slot corner. I'm thinking of like a Mike Hilton for the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm just thinking about what he did against the Buffalo Bills. And Trey is kind of that similar type of cornerback. He's not afraid to kind of, stick his nose in there and help out with run support. He's had some really impressive tackles. And he's just one of those guys I think that could benefit from being a little bit closer to the ball. And if he has a creative defensive coordinator that can use him in a unique way, I think even if he slips a couple rounds, he'll still be a guy that's going to make a roster and play a long time just because of the bloodlines he has, the training he has. And I think he's a top-notch corner. He's just going to be held back a little bit by his size. But I think he might be closer to 5'8", 5'8 and a half than 5'7", man.
Oh, I'm going to have to stand next. I'm 5'8 with a bullet. At least I claim to be 5'8 with a bullet. So I'm going to see if I can stand next to him at the combine and measure myself up with him and see where he fits. But, that's the thing about it is that people look at these guys and say the draft day is not the end-all, be-all. It's when you get there and what you do once you show up. Now, whether it costs him a round or two in the draft is not going to cost him an NFL career if he goes up and shows and make plays like he did in college. It may cost you some money early on and certainly cost you some rounds in the draft, but it may, certainly not going to cost you an NFL career. He's certainly going to have an opportunity. And the funny thing is just talking to guys, he's not going to be a first-round pick or second-round pick as you would expect Jim Thorpe Award winner. But no one says he's not going to get drafted. He's definitely going to get drafted. It's just a matter of where he can find the right fit. Max Duggan, he's a guy, again, Senior Bowl was a focus. I don't know if he had a great Senior Bowl. It doesn't, on paper, it doesn't look like he had a great Senior Bowl. He certainly wasn't one of the guys that stood out in the practices. But again, here's another opportunity, being a veteran guy, started so many games. And certainly you look at the quarterback with the San Francisco 49ers and what he did this year. He was a veteran quarterback who went Mr. Irrelevant, the last person picked in the draft, but was ready to play because of the season he had in college. And I think that, Duggan can have a similar profile going into the draft and for NFL team. He's going to be a veteran quarterback and somebody's going to take a chance on him. I don't think he's going to have to wait till the 7th round to be Mr. Relevant. I think he's going to get drafted 4th, 5th round. But your thoughts on Max Duggan?
That's about the range I can see him going in. I think he's a guy that I think, some quarterbacks go to the combine, they may not run and they may not participate, but they'll be there. He's a guy I think with a physical testing could kind of help himself because he's got track speed. I forgot what he ran when he was growing up in Iowa, but he's got legit track speed. He's showed that a little bit at times this year with TCU. So he's a guy that can arguably probably run one of the fastest 40 times for a quarterback. He looks like he's a strong kid to me. So from what I read at the Senior Bowl, it didn't seem like he threw the ball best, but whenever they did their 11-on-11 sessions, it seemed like that was when he was the most comfortable. So that'll be interesting to see if he actually throws, because Max is one of those guys, and I don't want to use the cliche, but he is one of those guys that kind of needs to get hit a couple times, I think, just to kind of really get into that rhythm, really kind of start getting hot and things like that. I'm not sure if he'll be the best thrower when it's just throwing on air, throwing the receivers, running without defenders and things like that. So he's an intriguing prospect to me. I think he's definitely going to get drafted somewhere maybe at the end of day 2, beginning of day 3. And kind of just like I said in my column, man, like what it means to be an NFL quarterback is so different now because you have more of those, I guess you could say, college-like schemes. And you've seen guys like Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, more guys with mobility and offensive coordinators finding a way to use that. So if you get Max Duggan on your team, obviously he's going to sit for some years. But long-term, he is a guy that I think he might get a crack. All it takes is just one injury, man. You're out in the starting lineup. And, if you cook for a couple games, then, hey, you can easily make some money just because there's such a shortage on quarterbacks even in NFL.
Touch on a couple other guys who is going to be at the combine. Do you think they have a chance to really make a name for themselves?
Steve Avila, I think he was TCU's best offensive lineman. Was an All-American, multiple outlets. He's a guy that I think he might be. It'll be Quentin Johnston first. He might be the guy that might come off the board next in the second round. It's kind of an interior O lineman that can play center or guard. Dylan Horton, the defensive end. I think he's going to be probably one of those guys that goes to the combine, runs a crazy 40, benches 225 or somewhere around 20 times, and leaves the combine as kind of one of those guys with a freak label. So his production was up and down this year, but he came on hot, 10 sacks in the last 7 or 8 games. I think he's going to test really well at the combine. And then I think D. Winters, he's an interesting guy. He's a little bit smaller, but he's kind of like an off-ball linebacker that I think kind of really fits what, maybe the linebacker position is moving to. He's a little bit smaller, but he has great speed side to side, can get after the pass rusher. So those are a couple more guys that I think they will probably be drafted in a decent range, maybe somewhere in the 2nd to 4th round.
Yeah. And, Avila's a guy that I think that the Cowboys, should be looking at. They need interior line help, and certainly one of the 2 linebackers or somebody they can be looking at. We're going to talk more about the Cowboys, get back into the Cowboys and what they're looking for at the combine and questions about Zeke Elliott's future. But right now, going to word from our sponsors, our good friends at Window Nation.
Window Nation, the star of window replacement and proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys, can help you fill the house this season with savings. Buy 2 windows, get 2 free, and make no payments and pay no interest until 2025. Fill your house for a customized authentic Dallas Cowboys jersey while supplies last. You could even help fill the Cowboys house and win tickets to a game. Visit windownation.com/Cowboys now for details. Call 866-95-NATION. Window Nation, proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Thank you, Window Nation, and we appreciate you sponsoring this show, Cowboys Overtime. We're going to be here all season long, all summer long, keep you up to date on the Cowboys, and certainly we're going to sprinkle in some Mavericks, some TCU stuff, and anything sports-wise that we're going to cover. Usually it's going to be Clarence Hill, me, and Mac Engel, but yes, we will have guests from time to time, and again, we'd like to thank Stephen Johnson for coming in and filling in for Mac. One of the big focuses of the combine for the Cowboys certainly is looking at prospects for the draft and who they, the needs they need to fill. And I think they have needs across the board, whether that's, running back, receiver, offensive line, quarterback, cornerback, defensive line, generally you want to take the best available player. And it's intriguing as we get ready for the Cowboys in the first round pick. They picked 26th. And one name that keeps popping up, is Texas running back Bijan Robinson. There's so much talk about, he could just on sheer talent alone, he's a top 5 prospect. But because he's a running back, he's been pushed down the board because of the evaluation of running back. And there's a good possibility, I think, that he can be available when the Cowboys pick 26. There's a question of, do you take a running back in the first round? And if you do, how can you pass on a talent like Bijan Robinson to come help this offense? The other issue is, well, if you're taking Bijan Robinson, what does that mean for the current running backs you have on your roster with Tony Pollard, who's coming off an ankle injury, and one Zeke Elliott, who could be facing the decision of take a pay cut or be cut, or, he might even get a pay cut at all. You watched the Cowboys, so you read the Cowboys games this year. Do you think Zeke Elliott has played his last down as a Cowboy? Should he be forced to take a pay cut, or should they even offer him a contract at all?
Well, it seems like, and obviously you would speak to this more than me, it seems like Jerry Jones and Ezekiel Elliott have this really tight relationship. And, maybe you could make the argument, maybe when he offered them all that money, they was a little bit short-sighted. So I think, and Jerry better than me, I think they'll probably offer him a pay cut, just because I think if he goes to the open market and gets cut or something like that, I think it will be kind of hard for Zeke to find a lucrative contract already because he's a running back. And then it kind of seems like the wear and tear is really getting up to him. I'm watching old highlights of him from, 2-3 years ago, and just the burst that he used to have, it just doesn't seem to be there anymore. So I think the Cowboys had to consider it. And I think the Tony Pollard injury probably just really – I feel like they just kind of changed their whole outlook on the offseason because obviously you bring TP back, you keep that 1-2 punch. But now with his injury, with what we're seeing from Zeke, and just the fact that Bijan Robinson brings what Jerry likes: attention, star power, a I guess, a quote unquote local kid not too far down the street in Austin. You know, there's a big Longhorn presence here. So I think the fan base doesn't need much to get energized. So I think if Bijan's there, I can see the Cowboys taking him. He's the Jerry Jones type of player, the big time star player. And I think he would feel a need with Zeke kind of looking like he's on the decline, and then Tony Pollard dealing with a serious injury.
Yeah, now Tony Pollard should fully recover from the ankle injury and be ready for the start of the season. But I think there's a shelf life. You know, I know you guy from Memphis. There's a shelf life on his career, his time. I mean, he's all speed, you know, and there's comes a time when there's diminishing returns on speed guys. And so you look at Tony Pollard, and you're going to bring him back. You know, the question is, do you give him the franchise tag or do you sign him to a long-term deal? You know, do you make it a year-by-year thing and let's put the franchise tag on him and reward him for what the great season he had, first 1,000-yard season. He's not a guy who's going to turn his nose up at $10 million. I mean, talking about a former fourth-round pick. You know, franchise tag guarantees him $10 million. There's no way he's going to, you know, not accept the deal that's going to put $10 million in his pocket. And then you see what you have down the road. The thing with Zeke, from my opinion, is, you know, I don't know what you can offer him that's not insulting. You know, because if you know, right now, you know, he has a $10 million salary. You're not paying him that. There's a $16 million cap hit. You want to reduce that. You know, do you reduce it to 5? Do you reduce it to 3? I don't know what number you can get at, you know, to bring him back, not insult him. And certainly if you do bring him back at a reduced salary with Tony conceivably making $10 million a year, we got to quit the charade of Zeke being a starter. You know, going out there with a starter. Tony Pollard is the starter. He's the primary running back. He needs to run out there with the first guys. You know, that, you know, we certainly have to stop that. But the thing that's intriguing is that even if you bring in Zeke back, it's still a year-to-year deal. You know, there's no future beyond. There's no certain future beyond next year. You know, and so it's time to start looking at the future. And we all know the problem with running backs. And I've had this conversation with so many people. Is that often they're at their best at the start of their career. You know, Zeke, from the first 5 years of his career, one of the best running backs in the league. The next 5 years, you know, obviously they're going to be diminishing returns. And you paid him for what he did. And winning 2 rushing titles and being one of the best running backs on the field. That's when you paid him, rewarded. But unfortunately, he was at a rookie contract at that time. And so when he started making his real money, we got the diminishing Zeke. We didn't get the big time Zeke. So that's my thing is when you talk about drafting a running back, and certainly a running back in the first round, Bijan Robinson will be a perfect prospect because, number one, you're going to get him on a rookie deal, and you got him for 5 years on a rookie deal in the prime of his career. And then after that, we'll see what you have. Obviously, I don't think no one's going to make the mistake, and no one has made the mistake of giving a running back the $96 million contract the Cowboys gave Zeke, you know, after his rookie deal was up. That's not happening again. And you can decide where you want to do that with Bijan Robinson if he becomes the player everybody thinks he become. But as of right now, for this team, you get a running back like that. If he's there in the first round, obviously, I don't think you don't need to trade up for him because there are a number of running backs throughout the draft that you can take. And certainly I think running back again will be a pick for the Cowboys at some point, certainly in the first 4 rounds. But if I get Bijan Robinson on a rookie contract, he's the player everybody thinks he can be, you know, as a runner and a receiver, impact player to pair with a guy like Tony Pollard next year. That's the move I would make for sure.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, and in that case, honestly, I would probably cut Zeke. You know, I'm not sure what the cap numbers would be. I know certain days the number may drop, but I think at that moment, if you got Tony Pollard, who should be healthy after the injury, you got to Bijan Robinson. I saw the tweet a couple weeks ago, and I'm sure once you get Bijan on that rookie deal, you're going to not run him into the ground, but they're going to do the same thing they were doing with Zeke. They're going to ride him hard those first 5 years they got him, and then see what happens. And you know, I'm a pro player type of person. I want guys to get their money.
Me too.
But it's just, it's a cold game now with the economics of just being a running back when, you know, you'll only have a set amount of carries. You know, that's why I think Kendrick Miller, TCU running back, easily could have came back, been one of the top running backs in college football. But it's like, hey, I need to get to the NFL as soon as possible because I only got X amount of carries in me before the decline starts coming. So if Bijan's there for on and off the field purposes, I think it makes sense for the Cowboys to take him. And I think if I'm Zeke, you know, I got my fingers crossed that he comes off the board before 26.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I'm glad you brought up Kendrick Miller because he certainly will be an option for the Cowboys as well at some point in the draft. But yeah, run him till the wheels fall off and let the chips fall where they matter. That. But if I got him on a rookie deal for the first 5 years of career, I'm running him till the wheels fall off, and then we'll see what we have next. And the notion that if you draft a guy in the first round, that's be there for 10 years. No, that's not necessarily the economics. If you draft a guy in the first round, you need an impact player from the beginning who can help you win the Super Bowl, help you have a chance to win a Super Bowl, right now. And this team is ready to win now. It's not about what's going on with the Cowboys 10 years from now because Dak may not be there. Some other guys may not be there. Who can help this team right now? And I'm glad I brought up Dak Prescott because there's been so much talk about, just on the interwebs. And that's why you can't believe everything you hear on the interwebs and the internet. And people be doing that fake news stuff and clickbait. But there's so much talk about the Cowboys being interested in the quarterback. And, there were some stories out there about the Cowboys kicking the tires and doing the homework on C.J. Stroud and some of the quarterbacks possibly in the first round. Well, that's some BS. Okay, that's not true. I mean, the Cowboys will most likely draft, of course, something that Jerry Jones had talked about, that they will be interested in taking a quarterback at some point in this draft. But for them to take a first-round quarterback, with all the needs that they have, with Dak Prescott, with in the midst of a 4-year deal and them openly talking about Dak Prescott being the quarterback here for 10 years, that's not realistic. It's just people just talking. And, Dak Prescott is going to be here. They need to draft a young quarterback. They need to draft the development of quarterback. Kind of what, because you never know. Certainly you saw what happened with Brock Purdy in San Francisco, a 7th-round pick who was, was a 3rd or 4th string quarterback to start the season was crucial in helping them get to the playoffs. So, and Dak missed 5 games and this past year. And so you want to have a development of quarterback in the system, but don't be misled that the Cowboys are not looking at a quarterback in the first round, especially a quarterback they have no shot at getting, like C.J. Stroud, who's going to go in the top 4 or 5 picks, as an option for the Cowboys in the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the amount of assets it would take to move up from 26 to inside the top 5 would probably set, even if they got the quarterback they wanted, would just set the Cowboys back a couple years from now from what the goal Jerry wants, which is win the Super Bowl. So I know Dak's not the youngest quarterback, so you do need to draft another quarterback. But I think that's where if I'm the Cowboys, I'm hoping Anthony Richardson falls maybe to the 2nd round. I don't think he will because there's just too much upside, too much talent. But that's the type of guy that I would love to have on the Cowboys because he's a guy that I think needs to sit for a year or two, and Dak would be closer to 32, 33. They're probably not going to get him. So if you're not able to get one of those guys, then I don't think there's any reason to waste any assets, any of those early picks on trying to land a quarterback when you invested so much money into Dak. This would be the offseason, I think, would be to invest in him from a personnel standpoint. You listed some of the needs: running back, offensive line, maybe one more receiver to complement CD Lamb. So I think those should be the biggest priorities for them. And, and we're starting to see now Jalen Hurts, 2nd-round pick, Brock Purdy, 7th-rounder. Dak himself was a 4th-rounder. You can find a good quality quarterback in those mid-rounds that can develop for a couple years. And then, whether he's just coming in for Dak, he misses some more time with injury, or down the line, he looks like he could be a guy that potentially take over. You can find a quality quarterback in those mid-rounds. So I think that's what the Cowboys would do, man. Unless something happens, and I can't foresee a situation where Stroud, Richardson, I don't think Will Levis is good, but Bryce Young, I don't see a situation where either 3 of those guys are available in the mid to late 1st round. So I don't see him taking the quarterback either.
Well, and you say Dak is getting older. He's only 7 years in, man. He's only 7 years in. Tom Brady played till he was 40.
Man, that's not gonna be.
Tom Brady played till he was 40, and the Cowboys actually are considering signing Dak Prescott to an extension this offseason, to help lower his cap number. That's on the table as well. So I mean, they're looking at Dak Prescott, at the, I think he's 29, 30, something like that. They're right, still a young quarterback by quarterback standards, young player by quarterback standards. Being here for, Stephen Jones said 10 years, certainly 5 or 6 more years is they're looking at him being the quarterback of the Cowboys. So, Stephen Johnson, we appreciate you coming on Cowboys Overtime and certainly replacing Mac Engel. You got a busy schedule coming up. You got TCU basketball in the thick of things. They're kind of falling off a little bit. Your your golden touch is not working with as you did with football team, this basketball team, but they have a chance to really rally at the end of the season and get ready for the Big 12 tournament.
Yeah, they got Texas Tech Saturday, then they got Texas again. That'll be, if I'm not mistaken, they got 3 chances for quad 1 opportunities, man. That's just how crazy the Big 12 is. So TCU went on my golden touch wore off, I guess, man. I can't stop people from getting hurt, but Mike Miles is back now. They almost beat Kansas again. So as he gets healthier, I think they'll close the season strong, man. They're a team that I think is still – you can still see them move up a couple lines on that March Madness projections, man. So I think they'll break out the slump again with another win on Saturday, and then they got the conference tournament the week after next. So they'll have a lot of opportunities for some more quality wins. The Big 12 is the best conference in the country. And I would argue this has probably been the deepest the conference has been, at least since I've been covering sports. So season's still far from done, man. But TCU, they got some work to do, but they're in a good spot. They'll be in the NCAA tournament for sure. Now it's just about improving their seeding to get the best possible path to potentially a Sweet 16 and maybe more.
Well, one thing we got to talk about in the future, and we'll do it on later shows or maybe just over some drinks at a neighborhood pub. You're from Memphis, you know barbecue, or you think you do. And you're in Texas, the home of the greatest barbecue ever. And you're going to be at Kansas City for the Big 12 tournament. I don't know if you've ever been to Kansas City, that's the Kansas City barbecue. But we're going to have you break down, at least have a discussion on the Kansas City barbecue and how it compares to Memphis and that pulled pork instead of this succulent brisket in Texas.
Man, we can do it. I tell people all the time when I disappoint, I'm not a big barbecue person, believe it or not. Believe it or not, man. The only barbecue I really eat is my pop because he knows how to make the best dry rub. But I'll try to do my best, man. For whatever reason, I just do not like commercial barbecue. It's missing that. It's missing that love and that soul that be in the food when it's home cooked for like the 4th of July. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I got some homeboys that barbecue. I'll get you, some of that barbecue. One of my good friends, Hardy Q, does a great barbecue. But
I've had some good briskets. I've had some great briskets since I've been down here. I'll give Texas that.
So some great brisket. But again, thank you guys at Window Nation. Thank you, Stephen Johnson. Mac Eagle should be back next week. Again, this is Clarence Hill, Stephen Johnson, Overtime, signing out.